Hi everyone, in this video we are going to configure an HTTP server. So you can see here we have HTTP server, and then we will use browser from these clients which are requesting some contents from this HTTP or web server. And in the second part of this demonstration app, we will also configure this DNS server. So instead of the IP address of HTTP server, we will be able to use some human readable name from this PC to retrieve the contents from this web server. So let's get started. So for that, first of all, we of course we need an HTTP server which will act as a server. So what we do, first of all, we need a server, and for that we can go to these end devices, and in this end devices you can see there is a server. So we are going to select the server and going to put the server in this workspace, and specifically if we name it, then this will be HTTP server. And then we need some of the nodes which actually need service from that server. So maybe these are two nodes somewhere, and these nodes are connected with the switch. So let me select switch here, and this is switch. Select switch, and then this switch is connected with a router. For instance, this is router, and then let's say these nodes are in a single network, and for that I can use a color here. Maybe if we use a color here, so fill color, we can select maybe green color, and that's it. And then let's say I'm going to draw that these are the nodes which are requesting for some HTTP contents, and then those contents are located at this HTTP server, and we are going to configure this HTTP server. Okay. And let's say this server is not so yes, okay, make it simple. So this HTTP server, and let's say this HTTP server is on some other network, and that is also connected with some switch. So I'm going to select a switch here, and then this switch is connected with this router, so we can make the connectivity now. And in addition to this HTTP server, let's say we have this network. Let's draw a second boundary to show the second maybe network here. So this is our, maybe just select this one. So we have this different network. So HTTP server is there, and on this HTTP server we have, for instance, these are some other PCs as well. So now to make connectivity, I'm going to select this automatic connection type. So just click there and then press Control key here, and just select this automatic connections from this PC to this switch, from this PC to this switch, and from this PC to this switch, from this PC to this switch again, and from this server to this switch. So I have selected all, I have connected all these nodes, and then from here, from this router, let's say these are two different devices, so I'm going to select a straight through cable. So I selected a straight through cable, and from this switch, this gigabit Ethernet 0/1, and then this goes to giga 0/0/0 interface of this router. And now this router's second interface, that is gigabit 0/0/1, is connected with this switch. So now you can have an idea that now these are basically in two different networks, and they are connected using this router. Now for this, first we need to assign IP addresses to this router. To both of the interfaces of this router should have some IP address. Well, for this I'm going to command line interface, initial configuration no, and then for IP address I'm going to global configuration mode here, and here we can see what interface was there. That was interface gigabit 0/0/0, enter, and then IP address. The IP address will be, for instance, IP address can be any. For instance, you can select 192.168.10.1, and then subnet mask would be 255.255.0 and press enter. And then we need to issue this command no shut. So no shut means no shutdown. This will, the line protocol is up and this interface is working. So this is specific interface. And then the next interface, for example, this interface, we can go from here to the next interface. Maybe interface that was interface gigabit Ethernet. So maybe just in short, we can write G0/0/1, I think. Yes. And the IP address for this, we can say, for example, 10.10.10.1, and the subnet mask, for instance, 255.0. And then no shut for this interface as well. So now this router is connected with this interface. We're just showing you everything. So for this, now these computers need an IP address. So for these computers, let's say desktop IP, that would be 192.168.10.2, and the default gateway will be 192.168.10.1. So it means this interface of the router is actually the default gateway for this PC, done with the IP setting for this. In the same way for this interface, again 192.168.10.3p, and the default gateway will be 192.168.10.1. So we are done with the configuration of these PCs. So these PCs should be able to communicate with this router. And if you want to verify, then maybe we can just ping from here. So I'm going to say this is this interface. Yeah, we can use ping command to ping default gateway. So that's 192.168.10.1. And you can see we are getting reply from this in specific interface. You can see here. So maybe if I just select the red color here. So this interface, sorry, this is specific, and this interface is basically playing the role of default gateway. And then we have some other on this side. For instance, we have these PCs, and now on this side we are selecting the network who has got the IP address. For example, that is 10.10.10.0, and this is 24. This is subnet mask. And then we have, like, we are going to configure this HTTP server. This is actually the main thing. Yes, I wanted to show you everything, but this is the main thing. So I have just selected this HTTP server. So this is general purpose server, and we have we will click the services, and here you can see we can configure HTTP, DHCP, DFP, DNS, syslog, AAA. So these all servers are possible to be configured on this server machine, but today we are just interested in HTTP. We just select HTTP, and then HTTP is on and HTTP service is on. So both of the services are on, and what will be displayed, that is actually depends on this HTML code. So in this HTML code we have something. For example, if we go on index and if we edit, so if we edit, then we want to show that what message should be displayed there. So for example, here we can say that welcome to the world of computer networking. So this will be the message which will be displayed when we will save it. Yes. When we access this HTTP server, this message will be displayed. Now we need to assign IP address to this server. So for that, I'm going to assign an IP address that is 10.10.10.10 and 24 bits is subnet mask. So I'll just go there, and then in the desktop, yes, we give the IP address to this server itself. So that is 10.10.10.10, and then this is the subnet mask. And subnet mask, you remember we gave 255.255.0 because we are using 24 bits in network portion, and the default gateway for this is 10.10.1. So this is the default gateway here. this. This is the default gateway. This router interface is the default gateway for this. And I wanted to actually show here why I can't draw this thing here. I want to show that this is the, yes, so this is the interface acting as a default gateway for computers on this network. So I configure default gateway here. And then these services, this is HTTP, we configured everything here, and this default gateway, and everything is working fine. And now let's ping this HTTP server from there. So for this, first I'm going to use command prompt and then use ping command. And for ping, I'm going to use the IP address of the DNS, not DNS, but this HTTP server, that is 10.10.10. Let's try if we are able to reach that DNS server from here. And if everything is fine, then we should be able to, yes, we are able to communicate with this HTTP. Now the actual contents which we are interested in. So we were trying to configure this HTTP server. So for that, to verify that this is working, so from this PC, I want to access the HTML contents or the web page, which is actually here, which is hosted on this HTTP server, the web server. So for that, I'm going to this PC and then click on web browser, and here I just need to give an IP address of HTTP server, that is 10.10.10.10, and press go. And you can see this is the HTML page. These are the contents which are displayed. And you can see here, this is the message which we just typed in there. So that was welcome to the world of computer networking. So this is something which we type, and we can change it. So this depends on HTML language, what we want to display there. And then these are different links which has been designed in HTML. So that's different thing, but now you can see that we can reach this HTTP server. So actually when we access this HTTP server or the contents on HTTP server, we gave the IP address of this HTTP server. But in our lives, we don't use these IP addresses. We just use the URLs. We use some like google.com or some other any website, for instance. So instead of IP address, we use some URL, some human readable names. And for that, we use some DNS server, which actually translates those IP addresses to some specific human readable name. So in this case, for example, I want to say that instead of when I'm going to browse it, so at this time, instead of using this IP address, for example, I want to use that networking.com. So HTTP and networking.com. So for that, we need to configure DNS, and we will discuss this DNS in a while. I hope this is not getting too long, but let's say how can we configure this DNS. So for that, again, we need a server which will act as a DNS domain names system. So for that, I'm going to go to end devices, select a server, and I'm going to put the server over here, which will act as a DNS server for me. I'm going to change it. That is DNS server. And for that, I'm going to the services, and here I'm going to select DNS services here. I'm going to turn on these DNS services, and the name, for example, I'm putting the name that's networking.com, and the address is 10.10.10.10. so this is the address of HTTP server here. And then we are going to add this entry so now instead of this, instead of using the HTTPS server IP address, we can just use this URL, this domain name from this with the help of this DNS. So we need to connect this with the network. So I'm going to select this automatic connection from this server to this switch. This is there. And then we also need to assign an IP address to this DNS server, but this DNS server is also on the same network, so this IP address should be in the same subnet. So I'm going to assign IP address to this server that will be 192.168.10.11, and default gateway is 192.168.10.1, and the DNS. So what is the DNS? For this we can leave it. We are done with the IP configuration, but here now in IP configuration, instead of in addition to default gateway, we also need DNS, because now when we will type something, the request first will go to DNS server. DNS server will give an IP address, and then this HTTP request can go to the actual HTTP server. So what is the DNS address we configured here? So that was 192.168.10.11, and then we're done with that. Okay. Now let's see, it will be interesting to see these things in simulation mode. So I'm going to click on simulation mode, and here edit filter. I'm only interested in HTTP traffic. So I'm going to deselect all these options and click on miscellaneous, and then go to HTTP here. Yes, it's done. I'm in simulation mode, and now I want to see how the traffic is being generated and going to HTTP server. So first I'm going to use this again web browser, and instead of URL, I'm just selecting the IP address of DNS server, that is 10.10.10.10, and then we press enter here, and then we click on this capture and forward button. You can see this packet is generated on this PC, forwarded, the request goes to switch forwards to the router forwards is to the switch on other network, on the next network, and then request this goes to this HTTP server. So you can see all the steps here. So this is switch to HTTP server, and then if again we press forward button, so this is coming back, and then this goes to router forwards it to the switch, and then we are back at the PC which actually requested for HTTP contents. And if you want to see the details, we can just click on this packet, this receive PDU. So we click on inbound PDU, and all the details of IP header, Ethernet, source IP address, TCP information, and everything you can see here. So we can see the HTTP response as well if you're interested, that this is the response which we received from the. Okay, so this time we did not use DNS. We just gave the IP address of HTTP, but let's say we want to, delete it. This time, instead of using IP address of HTTP, we want to say, so again from here, instead of, click on web browser. So instead of IP address, I'm going to say that HTTP, and then this is the name. What name we gave? That was, I think, the networking.com, I think. What name? And let me make sure. I suppose it says mention. So this was, go to services, and then we go to DNS. The name was networking.com. Yes, so we go there, and then we say networking.com. So this time, instead of IP address, we are using this URL for this, and then we click go here, and then we are in the simulation mode, so this will not work. So we need that window here, and then we click on this capture button, and now you can see here capture and forward button. You can see packet is generated. Now this time this PC actually is using the name networking.com, the URL, instead of IP address. So for that, this will actually first contact with the DNS server. Let's see what happens if the request is going to DNS server. Actually, we didn't select this DNS things here, so we only selected HTTP. So this is only showing us the HTTP. but let's say we have to select this HTTP. Sorry for that. We have to select from this filters. Actually, maybe I just need to delete these things and then again restart it. For example, again go to simulation here, and then in simulation we have this panel. We click on edit filter. So we are not only interested in HTTP, we are also interested in looking at the traffic for DNS. And let's see, where is this DNS here? We want to see the packets going to DNS. We want to see the DNS traffic as well. So let's see, this is DNS. Okay, done. And then we are going to again, for example, to this PC, next one. So this is HTTP, and that was networking.com. Go. I think maybe we forgot to configure IP address for this PC. So first we need to give, so not IP but DNS. So that is 10. DNS was 192.168.10.11. That was the DNS address. And now we can use this HTTP and then networking.com and then press go. And you can see here this packet has been generated, and now this will display as the DNS traffic as well. So let's see, for this maybe just like click forward. This goes to DNS. DNS will give the IP address for HTTP server. Once they have received the IP address for this HTTP server, the PC will now send this request directly to the HTTP server. So DNS has given the IP address for HTTP server, and now after this translation you can see the request is received by HTTP server, and then HTTP server is sending back the request to the original client which made the request, and now you can see we are back, and then this arrow shows that we are successful in retrieving the contents from this HTTP or web server. So this was some basic lab. We configured this HTTP server and DNS here. Now this DNS can be anywhere. This DNS can be, for example, in different network over here connected with this interface of the router. DNS can be here as well. So this location doesn't depend, but we need to be careful when configuring these things. And that's it. This was some simple lab which I wanted to show you today, and this was different network and this different network. Okay, so hopefully this simple lab might be helpful for you, and thank you very much for your time, and hope to see you in some other video. Thank you.